Welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Before we get started on this episode, I would like to invite you to our community so that you can hear more stories to inspire change within your life and positive change within the systems in which we live. All I want you to do is to click on the subscribe button. Your comments mean the world to us with anything that's resonated with you, and I absolutely love your support. I can't wait to go on this journey alongside you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get into today's episode. Today, our bite-sized episode is with Yatin Mistry.
Hi, my name is Yatin Mistry, and this is my tale to inspire.
So, talking about supporting marginalised communities, can you tell me, Yatin, the definition, your definition of what a marginalised community is?
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess if I give it as an example, for example, you've got the queer community, and a lot of people would say the queer community is a marginalised community because one, they're not the majority, and two, they tend to suffer from a lot of prejudice, from one shape, form or another. Another example, because I happen to relate to both of these, is, let's say, being brown in this country, which is majority Caucasian. That'd probably be another marginalised community. Not probably, it is a marginalised community. Again, because of the prejudices they face, So, for example, I think concepts like the glass ceiling, So you're working at work and you're doing really well, you're working really hard, but there'll come a point where you potentially can't surpass that barrier, and that potentially could be because you're brown, or it could be because you're gay or lesbian or trans. It could even be because you're the protected characteristics. So it could be because you're a woman, because you're disabled, etc. But marginalized communities tend to be communities, groups of people that have traditionally been inferior. Now, you've got two different aspects. So you've got the marginalized communities in this country. So like Asians, for example, it's an example of a marginalized community, but that's in this country. That same community in India or in China, for example, wouldn't be marginalized because that's the majority. So it comes down to that idea of prejudice, where a community is facing that sense of prejudice. This is my definition. I don't know what the dictionary definition is.
We'll check it out later.
But so that's kind of how I see marginalised communities.
So what are some common traits then? I know there's many different marginalised communities, but what are some of the common traits to be able to support those different marginalised communities?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think one would be, don't be afraid to ask. Like, are you okay? This is something that we're human beings, we're social creatures, we're interconnected on so many different levels. So when you see some sort of kind of prejudice or something that you think, that person's struggling, go up to them and ask them, are you okay? Is there anything I could do to kind of help out? Because that's quite important. Infrastructure, like from a more policy or, on a bigger scale kind of thing, policy being in place. So the NHS, for example, it could be doing work towards making sure that marginalised communities their healthcare needs are being met, So the trans community is a good example. We have a lot of transphobic rhetoric going on in the government, unfortunately, and so that spills into society. But, making sure that doctors and nurses are aware of the right type of questions. So if someone comes up, look, I prefer to be called he, even though they physically look like a she, respecting that because that's their identity. Or things like, let's say you're an Asian person and you wear the hijab, for example, and so you might not be as comfortable being seen by a male doctor and having that respected in some way. Now I get that, sometimes you can't always do that, but wherever you can, those kind of things are, I'd say, places or things that you could do to kind of help out. There's probably loads more, but
And on that front then, how do we change the rhetoric or the current norm to one that's a better norm?
So there's an expression, change comes from within, right? But I'd actually say in this instance, I'd say it comes through dialogue. Comes through conversation. So the fact that we're having this conversation, we come from different minorities. Maybe we're not minorities. I mean, clearly it's obvious that we're a minority in one sense. But, I think the idea that having these conversations, it broadens the horizon. I've had lots of conversations with different people from different groups. Some people are a little bit more, let's just say, on the fringes of not understanding certain minority groups' challenges and difficulties that they go through. Because we wouldn't be. I wouldn't necessarily know I don't have the lived experience of a trans person. I don't have the lived experience of a black person. I don't have the lived experience of a disabled person, let's just say. But having dialogue with people like that and having conversations starts that process of actually starting to understand. And then with that, having a bit of love, compassion, understanding, a bit of tolerance, that makes me realize that actually the next time I see a set of stairs and no lift in a building, I'll be thinking, actually, that disabled person would better get up there if they're wheelchair bound, for example. That's through conversation. So that's, I think, an element that's quite important. There's conversations, so yeah. And when I say change comes within, I think within as a community, I'm saying as by and large, do you know what I mean? Yes, the disabled community, yes, the brown community, and the black community, and the gay community, and the queer community, and refugee community, and the migrant communities can be speaking up, but we also need allies, and that's also important. So I think in this instance, you need both sides, kind of thing. So.